I would like to ask Professor Marek Pabich with his lecture of Architecture, Art and History.
Dzień dobry Państwu.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Wysłuchaliśmy na początku kilku słów ze strony pani profesor Justyny
Well,
Kobylarczyk.
we had that introduction made by Professor Kobylarczyk. She said that for her, architecture was a story.
Tak rzeczywiście jest. I
And
opowieść jest to
it is a story indeed. And story is something that continues over time.
za chwilę.
Well,
To ma być przywołanie tego, że
that
wszystko
is,
płynie, ale ciągle będzie
Pantarei concept, well, that everything flows, but I refer to that throughout my presentation, throughout my contribution.
To wracam do istoty zagadnienia.
Let me go back to the essence of my contribution. Well, I will speak today about three venues with one owner of a big art collection of art and one architect. But in the background, well, we have that notion that everything flows. We have water in the background and more. So on this picture, you can see one of the wealthiest men in the world, Wacław. He's so well known in France that even children can name him. Wacław has an incredible collection of art, more than 10,000 works of contemporary artists with relatively small money. Several decades ago, he started buying works of contemporary artists. They were not well known, but he promoted them and was buying more and more. And his collection is incredible. Gilbert George, Pistelotto, etc., Catalan. We have Antoni Tapies, Faraser, Marka Rozo. So this is an incredible collection. But then there are some Polish works, Szapocznikow, Opałko. Well, at the same time, he invests heavily into this incredible business. Some time ago, he bought Christie's auction house. Well, unfortunately, Bertrand Arnault is competing heavily with him. And he's competing with him in the field of business and in the field of art. So actually, that stimulates them both. I mean, that competition and makes things more interesting in the world of art and architecture. So the venues that are the main point of my presentation, these are Palazzo Grassi in Venice, Bourse de Commerce in Paris, and one more Venice-based venue. So in 2006, he opened the first gallery, and in 2014, he opened another one, and then recently he opened one in Paris. In 2021. So apart from hosting the owners' collections, these venues are made by, well, prepared by one architect. And what these buildings have in common, they are subject to very strict restrictions imposed by conservator of historical conservator. And in Palazzo Grassi, the architect added Teatrinum. It is a small building, small structure on the territory of gardens behind. And in Punta della Bogana, he added a huge concrete cubicle. And Bourse de Commerce, he added a structure which reaches until the basement. But it all started in Paris. Well, we say that everything starts and ends with Rome, but Paris was the first. the architect first was already working in Paris. Tadao Ando worked for UNESCO there, and then he started working in the western part of Paris in Bouillon-d'Aucourt in the Renault factory. François Pinault intended to build the largest museum of contemporary art in France. He wanted to compete with Guggenheim and Centre Pompidou, and he made some effort. He invested over 100 million euros. He demolished this Renault factory, and that actually what devastated him. Well, that was a certain symbol for France and the French. This is where the student strikes of 1968 were taking place, and so this is where workers starting marching from fighting for the rights. So for the French, that factory was a symbol. This factory is gone. There is even a saying. They say there is a saying, when Boulogne sneezes, the whole France has as a cold. So Tadao Ando won the architectural competition, or the contract for creating this new Museum of Art, but because of conflict and because of huge opposition from the French society, he had to give up. When the authorities of Paris tried many different approaches to revive that area, and then eventually a big Congress hall was erected there. So Tadao Ando and Pinault, basically, he decided to go to Venice, Italy, best coffee in the world. So I suggest we wander around the buildings that he owns. So in 2006, he opened Palazzo Grassi, with this roof window. Tadao Ando, he couldn't do much there. He uncovered whatever he could. He covered what he could. He opened up the staircase. And Tatiana Trouvé is now on show in Palazzo Grassi. So if you make it to Venice, do visit this art exhibition. It's definitely worth seeing because it enters into this relationship to the building, to the city, because of the fact that everything flows. So Tatiana Trouvé, when entering this palace, she had that observation. Quote, she felt that at that point in Venice, all waters of the world blend together. And this is her life motto, that water which flows everywhere may be a part of a river, and it could also go through our veins, through our cells. So the story about water is so interesting, although the exhibition is not only devoted to water. So she installed some elements of water infrastructure in the courtyard. So she brought some elements, like manhole covers, which would lead you to the underground network of channel. So Tatiana Trouvé in her Paris studio collected that incredible number of artifacts collected all over the world, and she uses that to create her exhibition. So this is one room that displays her collection. So what she does, she sets up installations which are related to space and the essence of transformation attention while entering into the relation with the space of an object. And sometimes these installations are not entirely safe. You may fear a window pane or glass pane to crack or fall onto your head. At the same time, she showcases her drawings and she takes us to a different dimension, uncovering these spaces which operate and function in Palazzo Grassi. Well, the second object, the second building which I mentioned is Punta della Dogana. So let us see again that concrete cubicle. So Tadao Ando, he had that minimalistic approach in the interior of the Punta della Dogana. So you have it, ladies and gentlemen, until Sunday to make it to the exhibition by Thomas Schütte, a German artist. Very simple interior and his works. So this artist, in his creation, he largely refers to a human being and different concepts of a person. So that's François Pinault lighting a candle in that bottle. So it's about addiction. So even at the entrance to this exhibition, we can see some forms hanging that symbolize the mental condition, which is not entirely healthy. So there are people who are not entirely human, and there are people who may seem strong, but the title of this sculpture is People in the Wind who can hardly stand. And then we have sculptures of faces, and we can see every imprint of his poem. As architects, we may be drawn to one of the rooms. The artist left some chairs for us. We may sit back and to reflect, because this one room is dedicated to the vision of architecture created by the artist. So these are the visions. They very well refer to the fact that everything flows, and perhaps it flows too much. There is too much flow, while these works cost like between 10 to 15 euros per each. Then once again, looking at the interior of Punta della Dogana, we may feel sorry for François Pinault, who realized that Bertrand Argot took over him, and he built that Louis Vuitton complex in Bois de Boulogne. So he said goodbye to his Venice collections and returned to his beloved Paris. So he announced publicly that he would buy the former Bourse de Commerce to create an art gallery. This is an 18th century building that replaced a palace that had been built by Catherine de Medici, and it was like a commodity exchange. It was called the belly or the stomach of Paris. So that space worked for some time as a warehouse for crops, for cereal. Because of changes in the transportation system, the building lost its function. Then it was converted to a commodity exchange from a warehouse, and then it was built by François. And again, Tadao Ando was invited to transform this space, and Tadao Ando, he was fascinated by Le Corbusier, and he wanted to create space which flows, which allows for moving in an invisible way. So it is a reflection of Le Corbusier's. These were ramps, slanting ramps, and though he designed hanging passages, and these are soft passages leading to space. In that space, it's difficult to distinguish between art and reality. He also introduced some very useful functions for presentation. So this journey in that space is not as difficult as these images of people running up and down the stairs. And let me now mention that exhibition by Céleste Boursier, which is now on in that Bourse de Commerce. So we may feel detached from reality. People can spend their hours just watching that everything that flows and think about architecture and reflect on architecture. We go to museums to see our own reflection because museums reflect the society. And finally, what I find interesting is the next year's title and leitmotif of this conference, invented by Professor Kozłowski. Thank you.